Good afternoon, ladies. Today is Praying Alive, Standing Before God class is dedicated for the Azkara of Umar Bat Altun, Aleh Shalom, and for the Azkara of Francis Bat Umar by Marcel Daba, Hazaku Baruch, Teneshmatam Tzura B'Tzura Hayim. Also dedicated today as a Mazal Tov to Rabbi Reuven and Nalini Ibrahimov for the beautiful blessing of a granddaughter baby Michal, and Baruch Hashem for the Edmund J. Safra Synagogue and the Chazak team for elevating our lives with true meaning with gratitude by Gila and Keith Sachs. Hazaku Baruch, congratulations. And thank you so much for that. And we also have today for in memory of Shirley Pelowitz, Sima Sheila Bat Risa, Be'ezrat Hashem, Tenishmatat Tzura B'Tzror HaHayim. Okay, let us continue from whence we dropped off, or whence we left off. We are up to the part of the tefillah of Mashiv, Haruach, Morid, Hageshem, or Morid, Hatal. Now, if you're Ashkenaz, you might be looking at me a little bit strangely, because not all Ashkenazim actually say both of those things. Some Ashkenazim will only say Mashiv, Haruach, Morid, Hageshem, and if it's not Mashiv, Haruach, Morid, Hageshem time, they say nothing. All right?
They don't say Morid.
Depends who. Not all Ashkenazim say both. Okay? That's just their custom. But for Sephardim, it's either one or the other. Either Mashiv Haruach Morid Hageshem or Morid Hatal. Now let's just translate what it means on a simple level, and then we'll dig into why it is that we're mentioning this here, even though we're not. You guys remember from CBS News? Remember that? When they would pass it off to meteorologist Craig Allen. Anyone remember that? Right? Like, I figure you have a news station that costs trillions of dollars, I don't know how much it costs, and all the equipment, and still they can't make the guy not sound like he's 500 feet underwater pinching his own nose. Okay? The barometric pressure, that was what it was 100% of the time. Okay. So, is that what we're doing? We're mentioning the rain and the wind. We're mentioning the dew. Is that the point? So the question is, as far as understanding what it is, what it means, why we're mentioning it, and even more specific perhaps, why we're mentioning it here. So let's translate it first simply. Mashiv Haruach means that God, literally, it means God causes the wind to blow. Mashiv Haruach, He returns the wind, brings the wind back, if you will. Umorid Hageshem, and He causes the rain to fall. All right? Morid Hatal means the same thing, Morid Hageshem, but during the summertime, when it's not a time of rain, we say Morid Hageshem, we say Morid Hatal, because that's a time just of dew. We actually don't want rain during the summertime. We want the crops that drank the whole winter to be able to have the exposure to the sun, to be able to grow and to become as complete as they can be. So, seeing that those are the two elements, really leaves us with one question. You know, there is an entire blessing in the Amidah, again, different for Sephardim and Ashkenazim, revolving around the rain. And that blessing is, of course, Barechenu, for us in the summer, and Barech Aleinu in the winter. Ashkenazim only have one version of that bracha. It's only Barech Aleinu. What they swap in the summer-winter switch is not the title of the beracha, but rather whether they say in the beracha v'ten bracha or v'ten tal umatar. Do we ask God for rain, or do we ask God for blessing, for dew, for something which comes softly? Okay? So in either scenario, we have this bracha in the middle of the requests part, and there it talks about the rain and or the dew. So why are we mentioning that over here? Specifically because the part of the Amidah that we're up to right now has really touched upon much more lofty ideas up until this point. The nature of God, the way God interacts with the world, the merit of our forefathers, HaKadosh Baruch Hu bringing the dead back to life, and then we're like, also mildly cloudy with a touch of rain. So it's a little bit strange. We need to pull this apart a little and understand what we're doing. Now, the first thing I mentioned to you the other day was that if something is found in the part of the Amidah called Gvurot, which means the strength of God, which is this section of the Amidah, we're acknowledging the strength of God, then the point over here is not to ask for something, but to recognize something. Is that clear? So in a second, we're actually going to get to Somech Nofelim, Rofeh Cholim. God, supports the fallen, He heals the sick. We have a bracha for the healing of the sick. They should all have a speedy refuah shlema. We have a bracha for that. So when we say Rofeh Cholim in this bracha, we're not asking Him to heal them. What are we saying? We are saying you are mighty enough that you heal them. You are mighty in the fact that you support all life. You are mighty in the fact that you can bring back something that is dead to something that is life, like we talked about. Amonai, Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud, and it's, so to speak, ironic correlation with the letters that spell the word undo. To be able to undo something, to turn something back, to recreate it from nothing. Now, since this is the case, if this bracha is a bracha of gvurot, what we're really looking for is a way to relate to God in understanding His power through the lens of wind, rain, and dew. So let's first deal with this from a naturalist perspective. Okay, I don't know if any of you has ever had the chance to be able to go out in middle of a hurricane. Most people are running inside. We were crazy enough to run outside. Not only do we run outside, it was one of my most vivid memories of my childhood in Deal. We had one year when right before Sukkot came Hurricane something, I forget which one, okay? You can Google it. I was a child then, so you're talking about something like 38, 37 years ago. And on Erev Sukkot, this hurricane came through Deal, and everyone who built their sukkah fell to the ground. I always say this, I'll never forget. Victor Shem Tov, Alav HaShalom, lived right around the corner. Victor and Sharon, I don't know if anyone knows them. You know them. So Victor and Sharon, at the time, they had a sukkah, and it was built out of PVC piping. Like they had all these PVC pipes that they put together, and that was the frame. The hurricane literally lifted up the entire sukkah because it was light enough. And the sukkah whole blew into the swimming pool. But because it was PVC piping and it had air inside, the sukkah was floating in their pool. Which is one of the coolest things ever. It made me want to dive into the pool and just like fulfill the mitzvah in my bathing suit. And then I started to wonder, what would the halacha be? Because I was a rabbi in training, even though I was a kid. Because only half of my body's in the sukkah, other half of my body's in the pool. Do I make the bracha then jump up into the sukkah? I had all sorts of questions, none of which were answered at the time. Okay. Now, we went down, of course, where's the smartest place to be during a hurricane? We went with my uncle to the ocean. We have a picture somewhere, I need to find it. Anyone else remember, there was a funny period in time when for some odd reason we thought that station wagons should look as if they're made out of wood. You guys remember that? I'm not sure who thought of that. Like, I know, we're making a car, it obviously should look like the Ark of Noah. That there was wood paneling on these. So we drove the family car, that's in the picture, that's in the background, and it's me and my sister, and we're standing there, and her hair is just in the wind, just blowing at that angle. Like up and backwards, okay? I was a boy, my hair looked almost the same, okay? But the two of us are standing at the ocean, right off of Hathaway and Ocean. You know, we went up across Ocean Avenue on Hathaway. We went all the way up to the beach. It's actually it's Joey's house on that corner. That's where we were, by Joey and Mindy Cohen's house. So I'm sitting there by the water. I'm leaning like this into the wind. We were like Michael Jackson in that dance, leaning literally like this, and the wind was strong enough to hold us upright, just leaning on the wind. You'd think we'd be smart enough to go home at that point. But you'd be mistaken. So, this concept Mashiv Haruach Morid Hageshem is first experienced when a person can recall and relive the absolute natural power of witnessing wind at its peak, rain in when it's thundering downpour. There was a little period, maybe 4 or 5 years ago here in the city, when they had a tremendous amount of wind. I don't know if you remember, and the trees came down like on every street. Remember that? Okay. I was standing looking outside my back window, and I had trees right behind the house. And the trees, they were these trees that were probably 100 feet tall. They were blowing in the wind like they were toothpicks. Like literally bending, and you'd hear the wind, the trees, almost sounding like they were gonna crack and fall in the house. Terrifying. At that point, what is there to do? Nothing. Yesterday we saw a Delta plane land, and one of the wings hit the tarmac while they were trying to land. Wind. The other day, when the plane hit the ground and all the people died, wind. We've managed to conquer all these things, but suddenly you come up against this force that the wind can actually be like, and you start to understand how powerful it is. When they built 432 Park, every 10 floors, they had to build an entire through floor, which means that front to back, there's no building. It's a hole. Because when you're building a building that's that tall, the wind will, concrete, steel, doesn't matter. The wind will blow it down. So understanding the sheer power of the wind, understanding that, feeling that, going back to a time when you remember it. Think of a storm that you were in, that you were caught in. I don't know if anyone here ever remembers being in like an insane storm where the rain is coming down in sheets. When you're driving on the highway and you can't see, and your windshield wipers are going nuts, can't see anything. You pull over to under an underpass because it's actually terrifying. 3 short years ago, I think it was, or maybe 4 years ago, the rain came down so fast, so hard, that people were dying in their cars on the sides of the roads. I don't know if you remember. There was a rabbi from the community dying, drowned in their cars. Insanity. 4 years ago in the summer. Okay? Now, I just want people to understand what it is that we're talking about. Go back and look at these scenes from China when you see like entire villages just swept away by a flood that came down in a matter of minutes or hours. This is the power, the raw power of the raw imagery of what Mashiv Haruach Morid Hageshem means in its strength. I remember, again, I'm giving you the visuals here, specific visuals, because the first thing I want you to connect to is to see this, to feel it, to remember it. I remember we took a family, and a friend of ours, it's very nice. Sometimes you go on vacation and people in the community will tell you, I have an apartment over here, why don't you stay there? Or I have a house, it's empty, use it, go with your family, enjoy it. One such example, guy told me, he has an apartment in Herzliya. Herzliya. I didn't know where it was. We went to this place, right? The apartment was on the top floor. It was like all the way around, all glass windows. We got there, it's on the ocean, and we got there during the craziest storm. And as we walked in, and the storm was surrounding the building, coming off the water, we turned off the lights, and it was like you were watching a fake lightning storm show. Slamming the thunder, shaking the building. I mean, this is what it was like. And everywhere you looked, and the lightning was forking all the way down to the water. It was something out of another planet. The first thing I want people to understand when you come to this is what Mashiv Haruach Morid Hageshem feels like when you think of power. Yes?
A lot of people know this. I was swept away with my son in a flash flood 2 summers ago. And we were literally going to die. And my son, who thinks he's an adult, held my hand and screamed, "Ima, what do we do?" And I said, "We scream the Shema." and we scream the Shema. The car's going like this, we're being hit by every side, we were going to topple and drown. And as we finish the Shema, we hit the only tree on the side of the road, which we couldn't even see where the road was, that broke the being swept away. So that was
unbelievable. So there you go.
All of you the videos, near Woodbury Commons. If you see the video, it's a miracle like you can't imagine. Just to add one thing, the only car that then smashed into us, they wouldn't get out the car to swim out, wouldn't get out, and the water was coming. They would have died in the car. And as she's swimming towards me, she screams, Ohad, Ohad. So we all think we're drowning. And my son looks up and he goes, you're Jewish? And as her son, and as her husband's trying to get out, she's going, Ohad, they're Jewish. While we're all literally trying, and it was just to understand, the only people we crashed into, and we broke, the tree broke our going away, they smashed into us, and we were all 4 Jewish people who got out, and not people died, but we survived. And it was just very coincidental.
Shtabach Shemo. Beautiful. So, thinking of the helplessness that you would feel in such a moment, that helplessness is gvura. The flip side of that is, there's nothing that you could have done about it, okay? So there we've gone, we've explained and expressed the simple understanding of the gvura, of the power of rain. I'll give you one more piece on this, is that I remember we went once to Canada, and we had the opportunity to pull over next to the falls, and we prayed shacharit next to the side of the falls on the American side. I'm not sure you should take this opportunity to go see the falls. Trump might tariff the falls, and then there'll be less of them. So you might want to go now sooner than later. But we're sitting there on the side, and we're praying. And the Chazan is screaming on the top of his lungs. Okay, as loud as he can. And no one could hear him. And all I could think of was the pasuk that we say in Tehillim, Mikolot Mayim Rabim Adirim, from the sound of the great and the powerful waters. Mayim Rabim Adirim. Adirim Mishberayam. Right? The sounds of the waters proclaim, Adir Bamarom Amonai. How God on high is so powerful. This idea, the understanding of the natural world and how puny we are to be able to fight back against it with everything that we have in our arsenal. You know, what do you do for a tornado? Nothing. You wait for it to finish. You know, what do you do for a tsunami? Nothing. You run as fast as you can. We don't have something that could stand up to these things. So the question becomes, when a person is seeing those things, to appreciate the gvura, the power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's the simplest level of understanding why we're talking about this here. So someone once asked me, you know, I don't understand. So if you're talking about wind, you're talking about rain, that is power. But tal is dew. It's the gentlest, softest thing in the world. Why would we mention the descending of dew in a blessing that's meant to recall God's gvura, God's power? So I said that maybe that's why Ashkenazim don't say it. However, it is part of our tradition to say it, and some Ashkenazim also do. So because that's the case, I want to also express and explain what power there is in Morid Hatal. So before we get there, please remind me to come back to this if I forget. I want to shift really into the next layer of understanding of what these gvurot actually mean. The Abu Dram writes that the reason why Geshem rain represents the power of God, is not only because rain is coming down with force. It's not only the power of rain that indicates God's power, but rather the very creation of rain itself. Says the Abu Dram, if you take a look and you sit there and you pay attention, when it's raining, you'll realize that as the rain falls, we don't tend to think this way, but as the raindrops strike your hand, you could see it, you could feel it. You could stick out your tongue and you could catch an individual raindrop. That raindrop has come from the highest heavens. It has fallen miles upon miles upon miles through the air, from heaven all the way to earth. And as these raindrops are falling, what's fascinating is they each fall along their own path. One drop of rain does not combine and smash into the other. You don't have in your hand all different sized drops of rain. Generally, it's uniform, the raindrops that are falling in your hand. And what is amazing about that is that when we talk about Geshem, especially later on in the request, it is the beracha that symbolizes parnasah. For in the same way, that blessing that comes from heaven to earth never mingles, never shares, never moves, rather falls all the way, arriving at its destination. So too, the parnasah that comes from God to this earth falls all the way from God's hands and His beneficence, all the way into our lives. A lot of times we're so afraid that somebody else is going to take that parnasah from us, so we're fighting it. But the gevurah of God is to ensure that the trillions of drops of rain that are falling have their own path and trajectory all the way from heaven down to earth. Each one to its exact place. Now, in order for that to occur, what would it take for the rain to fall? What does it take for those raindrops not to get mixed up? The Sfarim tell us an unbelievable idea that the Sefer Baruch She'amar writes that when God is letting that rain come down, where does rain come from? It comes from the clouds that are primed for rain. Well, the wind is the one that is moving those clouds from here to there, from Jersey to New York, from us to Chicago, the windy city, right? And the wind is the element that will decide, so to speak, whether or not the rain will take place in this locale. So in order for Morid Hageshem to occur, what does God need to do? He needs to, Mashiv could also refer to Hashavat Avedah, to return, to repel the wind. It's almost as if God is deciding. We think to ourselves about God interacting with our lives, but imagine God deciding on a puff of air which direction it should go. Not only where it should go, but as you ever notice, when birds are flying, you'll see there's a place in the air where they no longer need to flap their wings. There's a wind stream taking place at exactly that altitude. Dip beneath it or rise above it, it's no longer there. So God is deciding in the vast expanse of space of sky where exactly winds should blow, how strong, when do they stop, when does it let the cloud position itself over what? And after the raindrops start to fall, in order to ensure that they don't coalesce or combine, to decide to repel and hold the wind back with a precise focus on each one of the infinite drops of rain that are falling on our earth. What a powerful exhibit of control that is. That is Mashiv, Haruach, Morid Hageshem, even on rain that isn't falling hard or fast. Let me share with you one other piece that I believe is very interesting on this from Rav Zevlef. There are two different words that we use in the conversation regarding rain. One word is Geshem. The second word is Veten, Tal, Umatar. What is rain? Matar is rain. What is Geshem? Also rain. What's the difference between Geshem and Matar? Explains Rabbi Leff, unbelievable. He says that Geshem refers to the rain as it's being created in the heavens and as it's falling to earth. The root of that word, he says, is from the root of the word lehit gashem, when something is coming into existence. In the cloud form, there's moisture there. It has a specific atomic makeup, and therefore it is suspended in one form. When it shifts into a raindrop, it literally shifts its reality. So Geshem comes from the word lehitgashem. When it falls all the way, so in its act of creation in the heavens, in its falling to earth, it's Geshem. But then, when we talk about not the greatness of God in making it happen, but rather in the fact that it needs to be received by us, that it needs to water the plants, that we need a certain amount to fall, then we don't talk about Geshem, the creation of the object. We talk about matar, and the root of that word is matara, to reach a destination, an approach. So when we talk about rain as it lands in our fields, it is matar. When we talk about rain in its glorious creation, in its act of strength of God, it is Geshem. But this is the nuance that it takes from a person to pray with great devotion and with great humility, to see all parts of God's gifts and to feel the emotions that are rendered by each and every different emotion. So when we talk about this, says Rabbi Leff, expanding on this idea, he says that if you notice, we don't say Mashiv Ruach, Umorid Geshem. What do we say? We say Mashiv Haruach, Morid Hageshem. Why do we use the Hey in both instances? So I'll share with you, the first level is from what Rabbi Leff explains. Whenever you have a Hey in front of a word, it's referred to grammatically as the Hey Hayidiyah. What does Hey Hayidiyah mean? The Hey of knowledge. What does that mean? As an example, if I say that someone is a man, then I'm just saying he's a man. If I say that he's the man, what am I saying? There's something significant, special about him. Lots of men in the community. This guy, he's the man. I have people say this to me all the time. So that's so nice. You're the rabbi of Manhattan? No. I'm a rabbi in Manhattan. I'm not the rabbi of Manhattan. Hey Hayidiyah means the. It's a definitive particle. So if I'm looking at rain, that's not the gvura. If I'm looking at wind, that's not the gvura. What shows me God's greatness and His strength and His might and His ability is in the choice of which kind of wind. What, when, where, how wind. How high, low wind. How strong, weak wind. It's not just in rain. It's Hageshem. It's the rain that achieves matara. When you soak the earth, you think, fantastic, the earth has all of the moisture that it needs. But there comes a point where the saturation is so high that it actually kills the plants. So we don't ask for Geshem. We ask for Hageshem. Exactly what we need and when we need it. The question is that always the Geshem that we experience? And the answer is no. Because in Geshem lies humanity's understanding of the might of God. We can create a great many things. But there are things that as humans, we cannot create. We can turn a desert into a beautiful city. But we have to bring water to that place. And it doesn't matter how much technology we have, we can't make it rain. Israel is a place that has an arid temperature. I think maybe we should make a communal decision that everyone should take out their phones and put them on silent. Maybe that's a good idea. Yeah, okay, so if you haven't yet, because I know it's a mistake that happens to everybody, if you haven't yet, just take it out now and make sure it's on silent. Okay, now, the idea, I think, which is super powerful, is that this modality was actually something that was created for us to recognize God's greatness. Let me give you an example of the one place where we historically see that that is not the case. Now, why does rain exist? Sorry? To feed the crops. To give life.
They're almost 80% water.
Almost 80% water. Rain is necessary. Incorrect. You knew that was coming.
I said that's why I didn't.
Why is that incorrect? The answer is because actually God could have created the world in a very different way. If you go down to Egypt, that's the classic example of it. The reason why Egypt was a place that denied God was because what Paro said to his people. You know who God is? God is the Nile River. It didn't rain there. Could someone stop murdering a chicken in the kitchen? I'm not sure. Just tell them, let the chicken live. We need more eggs. They're slowly choking a chicken to death in the kitchen. I'm not. All right. Okay. The Nile River, what would happen? It would overflow its banks. They built irrigation channels. The irrigation channels brought the water from the Nile River to the crops. They never needed to look for rain. Never. It's the desert climate. When the Jewish people got to Israel, what happened? All of a sudden, they were exposed to a country that lives and dies by rain. Okay? Like in the 47 years I'm alive, I almost always remember Israel is in some form of a drought. Right? They have red lines, they just make more red lines. That's what happens. Goes under, goes over. Like we've never been in a green line pretty much, okay? Except in the Shtachim. Either way, the point is, when we look at a country like Israel, it's designed that way. Why? The Pasuk tells us about Eretz Israel. Eretz Asher Enei Elokecha, a land that the eyes of your God are always upon it. The Pasuk is communicating that as humankind in Israel would look to the heavens to see whether or not there were clouds in the sky, whether it would rain, God in Shamayim would also be looking down at his people who were praying for rain to come. And there would be a moment of connection between man and his maker. Egypt created a reality where people did not need to look up. And since that was the case, Egypt became a place where humans only looked down, where they became obsessed with adultery. It was a country built on principles of adultery. Why? Because there was no spiritual head lifting that took place in Egypt. They didn't need God, so they did what they wanted. The nature of rain itself is to cause mankind to look to the heavens. It is a element that causes humans to remember their humility, and to remember that without God, they literally would not be even life itself. Shamayim is another stage of this. Shamayim is al pi Kabbalah, that's the place of waters, great waters. There's more water in the heavens than there is on earth. This is a whole other topic, but yes, okay? Now, when I asked you the question, I was literally fooling you. Because if that model works in Egypt, it could work everywhere. God could ensure that the waters of the great deep run in underground channels, canals, wells, springs, and it would feed the earth from underneath. And we would be just living on earth that was constantly watered. God could cause, again, think about this for a minute. Where should all the rain naturally really occur? Above the water. Water evaporates, causing clouds. Clouds then, at a certain point, release their water back. God could have created a looped system out in the middle of the ocean, and we could have lived our lives without a single drop of rain falling on solid ground. But God gave us this gift to be able to remember Him. And that's what we're recalling here in Gvurot Amonai. When we think about how vast God is, how great He is, one of the things that we can use to be able to recall that is our understanding and our reliance on the nature of rain itself. Now, let me take you to the next level of understanding. Because actually, these words are sandwiched. This whole conversation about rain and dew and wind is sandwiched. Let's go back for a minute. What comes before it? Ata gibor leolam amonai. You are eternally mighty, O God. Mechayem etim ata rav leoshia. You bring the dead back to life and you save abundantly. We talked about that last week. So we go from reviving the dead and the salvation that God provides all the time, shifting into rain and dew and wind. And what comes right after that? Mechalkel chayim bechesed. How God sustains life with kindness. Mechayem etim berachamim rabim. How God revives the dead, again, berachamim rabim, with great mercy. We're going to talk about that sentence next week. But you see that there's a sandwiching going on over here. And the Chachamim explain that ultimately there is a link between the Tal, which comes down, the dew, which comes down, and the Tchiyat HaMetim, the reviving of the dead. We spoke about this last week. In fact, the method that God will use in the end of time to bring back all of those that have passed before us that deserve Tchiyat HaMetim is going to be through the bringing down of a special type of Tal. Tal Shel Tchiyah. We mentioned this last week. A dew of revivification. Now, I want to just spend 1 minute thinking about the Gvura, the power latent in that idea, in the Morid Hatal aspect of that. Huh? Givurat Gishamim? I don't remember saying Gvurat Einayim. Did I say Gvurat Einayim? No. Okay, I'm not sure what you mean. Yes? So let's take a look at what this means. I think that this is really interesting. I want to quote to you a Tana Debe Eliyahu that is brought by the Sefer Ha'arat HaTefilah. Blew my mind this. I am today years old when I found this out. The Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer says, it tells us a backdoor understanding of one of the pivotal moments in Jewish history. On the night when Yaakov takes the blessings from Esav. Anyone know what night that was? It was the night of Pesach. Yitzchak says to Esav, go prepare me, go get me goats. What were those goats to be? One was to be a Korban Pesach, and one was to be a Korban Chagiga. Those were the two goats that would have been brought, okay? Esav goes off. And then Rivka, we know, says to her son Yaakov, your father does not know what a wicked man your brother is. He's about to give him the blessings. If he gives him those blessings, it's all over. You need to go get me from the backyard 2 of the sheep that we've got that belong to me. I'll prepare them the way your father likes. She takes the fur, she puts it on his arm, so he feels as hairy as Esav. He goes in, he says what he says. Yitzchak gives Yaakov the blessing. Okay? Esav comes back a while later with the food. Yitzchak says, I'm here, get up, eat from my food, give me a bracha. Yitzchak says, I already gave you a bracha, what are you talking about? They finally realize, Ba achicha b'mirma, your brother came and he took your blessings. Esav says, I can't believe he took my blessings. This is why they call him Yaakov, because he tricked me twice. He tricked me when he took my bechorah, my firstborn, and he tricked me now when he took the beracha, the blessing. Yitzchak already understands that the blessing was supposed to go to Yaakov, because Yaakov had purchased the bechorah. Esav didn't think it was valuable. He sold it for nothing to Yaakov. So he says, Gam baruch yihye. He will retain his beracha. Esav begs for another beracha, and Yitzchak gives him a compensatory one. Now, all of that is in the pasuk. Let me share with you the Tana de Belial. Higia leil yom Pesach. The night of Pesach came. Vikara Yitzchak le'esav. Yitzchak called Esav. Be'eno ve'amar lo, and he said to him, Bini, my son, zeh halayla, this night, kol ha'olam kulo, omrim halel. All of the people are saying halel. Ve'otzrot tilalim niftachim b'zeh halayla. And the heavenly treasure houses of dew are open on this night. Aseli matamim, go get me the goats, prepare them for me. Ad shani be'od avarecha. And when I'm in that state where I've eaten the korbanot, where my soul is glad, where I feel indebted to you, I'm going to give you a beracha. Okay. The Tana de Belial continues. Amra lo Rivka Yaakov. Please only answer amen if you're listening to this live. Baruch Hatal Adonai. Amra lo Rivka Yaakov. Rivka says to Yaakov, Bini, my son, zeh halayla, tonight, otzrot tilalim niftachim bo. The heavenly storehouses of dew are open. Halach ve'evi shnei gidei ezim. He did what she told him. He brought the two goats, echad keneged haPesach, ve'echad la'asot lo mata'amim. Kshiyatzah Yaakov, and when Yaakov went out me'et pnei aviv, after he got the blessing from his father, Yatsa me'utar kichatan uchikala b'kishurea. He emerged and he looked like he was dressed in the finery of a bride and groom on their wedding night, from the spiritual power of the blessings that had just been placed on his head. V'yarad alav, and fell on Yaakov on that night. Tal shel tchiyah, the dew of the revivification. Min hashamayim, from the heavens. V'naasa gamhu gibor hayil, and instantaneously he became also a gibor chayil, a man of tremendous might. This always struck me. Yaakov is this weakling. Yaakov is this guy who sits in the tent all day. He has no strength. He has nothing. He gets immediately after the blessings, he goes to this place and there's a stone on top of the well that no one could lift. They all have to wait for all of the shepherds to get there in order to be able to lift off the stone. They tell him, oh, it's for Rachel. What does he do? He takes off the stone by himself. Where do you get that power from? He's tending all of Lavan's sheep by himself. Where do you get that power from? He fights Esav. He fights wars, says the Mamlues, with incredible gvura. Where do you get that strength from? This Ishtal, Yoshev Oalim, I never knew the answer to this. He was going to fight with his sons against Esav and 400 men. He's only worried that Esav's going to get to the other camp. And the answer is that that's what happened on this night. He became a Gibor Chayil. Now, there's literal elements of this. There's powerful elements of this. But I want to focus you on one nikudah here. This tal, this dew, whatever it is present on the night of Pesach. That is its strongest time. Therefore, he gave the brachot on that night. That dew that takes a dead person and reanimates them, so to speak, when the time will be right, it took a living person and made him into an incredibly powerful version, like a superhuman strength version of Yaakov Avinu. In the tal is this incredible strength. I thought to myself that the creation, the building of someone from a dead person back into a living one, described in the prophet Ezekiel, when the bones will be there, and all of a sudden the sinews and the veins and the muscles and the blood, everything needs to surround the bodily structure and be brought back to life. All that's going to happen. That is the ultimate process of building something, creating something. The letters of the word tal are tet and lamed. All of the forms of building are incorporated in the lamed tet melachot, in the 39 melachot. The letters of tal are 39. Lamed tet, tet lamed. There's a building process that is there in tal. In some ways, even more than in Geshem. Why? Because Geshem can have in it an element of harshness or scarcity. But tal is the gentlest form of building. It's something that can build and sustain and moisturize anything and everything without overwhelming it. Rain falls in various places, but dew falls everywhere. So the gvura of tal is not in quantity, it's in its width. Its quality is in its universal nature. That God, even when a person does not feel that they are being strengthened or built by God, when they are going through something which doesn't feel like it's building them, it feels like it's destroying them. It doesn't feel like this is a plant that has rain that is growing. There's a silent version of growth that is occurring within them. And that is part of the gevura that is latent in tal. Its highest form in Tchiyat HaMetim, a version of it seen on that night in the strengthening of Yaakov, but some form of that strengthening happening to all of us in a constant and in a consistent way. So my friends, when we look at this idea of Mashiv Haruach Morid Hageshem, we need to be able to focus and feel the raw power and strength of God through all of these definitions. So let's try and just revisit what this would feel like or should feel like when a person is praying and saying these words. Imagine, okay, this is your meditation for Mashiv Haruach Umorid Hageshem. Close your eyes and think it with me, and this should be where your mind goes and your soul soars. Hashem, you are so powerful. Mashiv Haruach Umorid Hageshem. You bring the winds and then you repel them. You can have the most thunderous element of rain pouring down, storms that nothing that we humans do can stop, typhoons and tornadoes, which are powers, which are children of wind. These things that come from you, Hashem, they illustrate your tremendous greatness, your strength. But in that same strength, in bringing the wind that will uproot houses and have cars and trees flying through the air, there's also this unbelievable, gentle and thoughtful, intentional manipulation of the wind, causing the wind to come in the right speed and rebuffing it so that it doesn't push the clouds away from over our crops, from where it needs to fall. Hashem, you allow for each drop of rain to chart its course from the heavens all the way to the earth, with two drops not mixing, with each drop having its address. What gvura that is in your system of delivery from heaven to earth in the process of the rain. So I see your storms, I see your raw power, God, but I also see your gentle ability to be able to navigate and guide something to where it needs to go. Softly even more than Hageshem and Haruach, in exactly the right amount, is even something which is not capable of any more Geshem whatsoever. So it receives Tal, something that blankets, or water, moisture, blessing that blankets the entire earth, righteous and unrighteous, fulfilling your ways and not fulfilling your ways. All are represented in your system. All are touched, Hashem, by your love. I can see HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not only these elements of Tal with regards to nature and power and growth, but also in the strength that they bring, in the reviving of those that are dead, but also in the bringing of strength, a constant, consistent bringing of strength to all human beings across the planet, even in strength which is indiscernible. Watching someone, you wouldn't know it, you wouldn't feel it, but it is coming and it is being given by God on a constant basis. All of that is the feeling that we feel in that moment. Try and go back not to a random theory of a storm, but to remember a storm that you actually experienced. The fear, the awe. There are times when I just walk to my door when it's pouring so strongly, and I just sit and stare at the rain. I think also that there's something so interesting about how people will go and put on a white noise machine to play the sound of rain falling on your window or on the roof. I think that subconsciously as humans, when we hear rain, we are comforted because it reminds us of God's control and His ability to bring. Hashem, thank you for giving us something that allows us to remember that you are in control of all of this, because if it came through underground springs, which it mighty well could have, Hashem, we would not remember ever to look up. That is all in Mashiv, Haruach, Morid, Hageshem. I'll end with one story that I was reminded of last night. A young fellow went to work one day, and his partner said there's someone from the community, and he's asked if we would mind sharing our contacts for Walmart. The guy was not operating in our field, in what we sell. So the partner said to him, his partner, he said, do you think we should share with him our contacts for Walmart? Because even though he doesn't want to sell them something that we're selling, but he might decide to do that tomorrow. And then we've built him that bridge, and that's going to come at the expense of our sales and our parnasah and our livelihood. He said, sit down, he told his partner. He takes out his phone, he says, watch this. And he played him that morning's breakfast in the class, which he had just been listening in the car, where I said exactly this concept about parnasah. I said, if you're praying in shul for God to give you livelihood, you should pray not only for yourself, but also for other people. But not only should you pray for other people, you should also pray for your competition. And I got exactly that sound from the shul. Oh. I'm going to pray for my competition. And then I upped the ante and I doubled down. I said, because if you can't pray to God for your competition, you have no business praying to God at all. If you believe that it comes from Him, He's got enough to sustain the whole world. He doesn't have to take His dollars from your pocket. He's got enough dollars. So if you can't pray for your competition, you don't deserve, you shouldn't be praying at all, because you don't obviously believe that it's in God's hands in the first place. He finishes playing this clip from the class. He tells the guy, he says he's our competition, but the guy can't take anything from us. Share the information with him. Guy says, okay. Inspired. Breakfast in the class did its job. He shares with this guy the information. A few hours later, on the same day, our fellow the guy listening to breakfast in the class in the car gets an email. And the email just says, see below. Who's the email coming from? One of his competitors. And he sees below where the guy has copied in, this fellow, his competitor, has copied in all of his details, him and his company. So he scrolls further down the email to see what it is. And he sees that there's an email from the buyer from Target. Target is one of the biggest retailers in America. And the buyer from Target had sent an email to all of his competitors saying, there's a certain jacket or whatever product I want to buy. Can someone please tell me and put me in touch with this specific person and this company? So one of his competitors responded to the buyer with his details and then forwarded it to him. Guy calls the buyer from Target, and the buyer says, I'm sorry, I've never done this before. I've never reached out to the competition and asked to give me information of their competitors. Not only that, she says, I'm a buyer from Target. Everyone is trying to sell to me. I never chase a sale. But for some reason, I felt compelled to reach out to get your number, and specifically to get your number this way. On the day that he said that it won't affect their parnasah, on the day that he said you don't have to worry about competition, on the day, what happens? His competitors are giving his details to another buyer. Hashem saying, Hazaku Baruch, I tip my hat. So I shared the story. And someone from this class, who I will not point out, maybe till the end, you might be able to guess already. Here's this class. She goes into a meeting. And in this meeting, there's two people sitting there, and they ask her, in the business, in the industry she's in, they say, we're thinking about this, using this other person, her competition. What do you think about them? Remembering what she just heard, she said they're good people, honest, whatever, upright, whatever, 100%. You're using them, you should continue to use them. And she's here in this meeting. She's the competition. And they smile at her and they say, we just wanted to hear how you would speak about your competition. And if I got the details right, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, they invite a new person into the room, an Asian person, Asian man.
It was an Asian, the company was Jewish. I just want to, because it's so miraculous. Your story finished, breakfast in the class finished as I parked into the car park to go into, it wasn't a meeting, it was a golf event. The competition is a Jewish guy, but they sold the company to an Asian guy, who then comes into the meeting and says, I heard what nice things you said about us. The next day he held a meeting with me and my husband and said, we don't take the two insurances that you take, which means they are absolutely not our competitors at all, and we're giving you all our business from the whole company.
Because of the way she spoke, the person she was supporting turned around and gave all of that. That is what it means that one raindrop doesn't mix with another. It has a point of origin and a point of arrival, and matar comes from this beautiful thing that God made, mitgashem, that God created. This is the power we're referring to in Mashiv Haruach, Umorid Hageshem, Morid Hatal. Baruch Adonai Le'olam.